So you might have seen one of our recent videos talking all about the 2024 iPad and why I think it's going to be an epic upgrade compared to what we've had over the last couple years. And in that video, my main sentiment was that in 2024, I believe that's going to be the year of the iPad because Apple last year gave us no updates to any of the iPads in any lineup, so this year Apple's going to revamp the entire lineup moving forward. And 9to5Mac actually reported on an article by 91 Mobiles about some awesome new renders for the upcoming 2024 iPad Air. So in this video, I want to give you guys 4 reasons why I believe the iPad Air is going to be the winner of all iPads moving forward. But without further ado, let's get right into this video, everybody. So reason number 1, and probably the biggest reason, and excuse the pun because I'm going to let you know why that's a pun, is that Apple's working on a brand new version of the iPad Air. So we've known the iPad Air to be the 10.9-inch iPad Air. It's been that same size for a little while now. It did get that industrial design language change a couple of years ago, but for the most part, it's been one size fits all for the iPad Air, and it's kind of fit in this middle ground between kind of like a content consumption machine and then a premium productivity device, right? Right now, the 2022 iPad Air does have an M1 chip, so it is powerful enough to run some of those more intensive tasks that are run on the iPad Pro, but it does lack some of those more niche, kind of higher quality and hardware updates like that ProMotion display and things of that nature. But again, that iPad Air comes in one size, and that one size is what you get for the iPad Air. But what Apple is probably noticing as the years have gone on is people don't really want to spend an absurd amount of money just to get a larger size device. Because as of right now, the only way to get the largest iPad is to go with a 12.9-inch iPad Pro, which starts at $1,100. And for a lot of people, that's a hard pill to swallow, especially for those people that are going to be using this iPad in a much more kind of casual way for content consumption and surfing the web, and reading an ebook and things like that. So for $1,100, it's hard to convince people to go that route. So Apple learned this with a few different products that they've already done this to, right? They started with the iPhone lineup. First, we had the iPhone 12 mini and the 13 mini with the regular 13 and iPhone 12 lineup. And yes, in theory, maybe people wanted a smaller phone, but obviously it didn't sell enough. Then Apple with the 14 and 15 lineup got rid of the mini and brought us the iPhone 14 and 15 Plus, which is selling much, much better compared to the iPhone 13 and 12 mini. And what we're learning is that people don't want to have to spend an extra $300, $400, $500 just to get the larger device. They're willing to take some sacrifices on the hardware to get a larger screen size, right? Like the iPhone 15 Plus still has a 60Hz display. The USB-C port doesn't actually give you the fastest kind of transfer speeds and charging speeds. And there's some other little nuances like only a 2-camera system versus a 3-camera system. And people are okay with that. They're not going to want to spend $1,500 on a 15 Pro Max. They can just spend, their $800, $900 on a 15 Plus and get 99% of the experience on a day-to-day basis. And then if you realize Apple did this same exact thing with their MacBook Air lineup, right? The M2 MacBook Air or even the M1 MacBook Air was an amazing device that people loved it because you got a great bang for your buck from a performance standpoint, efficiency standpoint, battery life standpoint. And for $1,000 or $1,100, you got a full-fledged operating system and computer that you can use for years on end. But people wanted a larger display on that same MacBook Air, right? But then they didn't want to go and spend MacBook Pro money like $2,000, $2,500, $3,000 on a 14 or 16-inch MacBook Air. So Apple, they literally just took the MacBook Air, the M2 MacBook Air, and made a 15-inch version and increased the price by about $200. And now that MacBook Air is selling like hotcakes, and it's one of Apple's best-selling laptops of all time because Apple learned that people didn't want all that extra horsepower and they didn't care about the mini LED display. They just wanted a larger canvas that they can take on the go in a nice and light form factor. So with all that being said, Apple will be releasing a new larger iPad Air. They're still going to have the 10.9-inch, but Apple's going to now give you an option to have a 12.9-inch iPad Air moving forward, and the price is going to be a lot less than 12.9-inch iPad Pro comparatively. So this iPad Air is going to be for those people that don't care about having an OLED display, for those people that don't care about having a mini LED display, for those people that don't care about the 120Hz ProMotion, for those people that don't need Thunderbolt, for those people that don't need a dual camera array, and people that don't need a LiDAR scanner on the rear of their iPad. They just want an iPad that works well, is powerful enough to handle some intensive tasks, but for the most part is going to be used for casual use, but they want that large display and that large canvas. So that's what Apple's going to give us with the 2024 iPad Air. Literally, I think what's going to happen is imagine the 2018 iPad Pro that released again in 2018. It's going to be that same exact chassis, but without the actual ProMotion display and some larger bezel. And I think this is a very smart move by Apple because Apple has been seeing that people are gravitating towards larger devices, but they are hesitant to go to a larger device because of price. So bringing the larger device price down overall is going to be a big win for people that want to get a larger iPad without having to spend $1,100 or even more with the rumored $1,800 12.9-inch iPad Pro that's releasing later this year. So that is the first reason, right? The first reason is that Apple is going to be releasing a larger iPad with the same exact form factor. And there's a bunch of other smaller things that are going to be changing, but for the most part, the main difference of this iPad is going to be that they're going to be offering a new larger 12.9-inch model to go along with that 10.9-inch model. And then in some of those renders that we did see from 91 Mobile, if you look at the rear of it, Apple will be keeping the single camera design, but they are changing the look of it a little bit to give it almost like an iPhone 10 and 10s look of that pill shape. So it's going to be the camera on the top in that same kind of protruding pill, and then below that camera will be a mic array as well as a flash. So that is going to be the design. Overall, it's going to be exactly the same. Outside of that, it's still going to have Touch ID. It's still going to have that industrial design. It's still going to be a 60 hertz LED display, so it's not going to have any ProMotion. Maybe the Jelly Scroll is going to come back, but for the most part, the 12.9-inch iPad Pro is going to be a big seller in my opinion. And then, of course, Apple's going to have to 2024ify the iPad Air by bringing it to the M2 standard, so it will be putting an M2 chip in there, as well as things like Bluetooth 5.3, Wi-Fi 6E, and everything else to kind of make the internals just a little bit newer, because the last time we had an iPad Air refresh was in March of 2022, so this will be pretty much a full 2-year cycle from the last iPad Air to the new one. So again, this iPad is going to be powerful enough to handle some of those more intense tasks, more productivity tasks, but it'll be amazing at some of those low intensity tasks like viewing content, surfing on Safari, maybe the occasional gaming session and things like that. And that is what we're going to be getting out of the 12.9-inch iPad Air in 2024. And then the next reason is because of the fact that it's going to be a larger iPad, we're going to get two things in there just by default. We're going to have a larger speaker system, and it's going to be a little bit louder because there's going to be a lot more space inside of the actual iPad for it to kind of echo and bounce around and create a little bit more bass. Then also, obviously, we're going to have a larger battery in there, and this could be the new iPad battery king, similar to the iPhone 15 Plus and 14 Plus, because of the fact that it's still not going to have that ProMotion display or an OLED or a mini LED display. It's going to have a regular 60 hertz LED display, so the battery is going to be much larger. Yes, it's going to have to power a more sizable screen, but I do believe it's going to be the battery king when it comes to the iPads moving forward. And then the last reason is that it's going to be compatible with the old accessories that the 12.9-inch iPad Pro is compatible with, most importantly, that larger Magic Keyboard. Because as of right now, the 10.9-inch iPad Air is compatible with the 11-inch Magic Keyboard, but for me personally, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, or leave some comments down below on your opinions, but I think it's very crammed style with the 11-inch iPad Pro and the 10.9-inch iPad Air Magic Keyboard. It's just a little bit too crammed for my personal liking, so using the 12.9-inch iPad Pro with the Magic Keyboard is how I personally use it, but now being able to use that with the actual 12.9-inch iPad Air is going to be a nice little add-on. So you can have a cheaper iPad Air, maybe get a refurbished or an Amazon version of the actual Magic Keyboard, and now instead of spending $1,400, $1,500 on that setup on the iPad Pro side, you're now spending maybe $800, $900, or $1,000 on the other side with the iPad Air as your main computer. And I do believe that's Apple's grand plan. I think Apple is going to want to have to replace the 12.9-inch iPad Pro with the 12.9-inch iPad Air in the lineup, so people still have the option to get a larger iPad, but if they want to get to that 12.9-inch OLED, 120 hertz ProMotion with the camera sensors on the rear and, the M3 processor inside of the actual iPad, then yes, they're going to have to go for the 12.9-inch iPad Pro, which, again, it's going to be retailing anywhere from $1,500 to $1,800 for a baseline storage one. All things that we're going to have to consider moving forward, and the buying iPad guide for 2024 is going to be a very interesting one, which we're definitely going to make, so definitely subscribe to the channel, but it's going to kind of change up the way that Apple's going to be pricing everything, because the iPad Pro is now going to go into that MacBook Pro territory where it is $2,000, where it is $2,500, because they're going to be releasing a new Magic Keyboard, maybe an Apple Pencil Gen 3 for those iPad Pros, and Apple wanted to give people a cheaper option, but that has relatively the same form factor and 99% or maybe 95% of the experience that you get on the iPad Pro side. So I think the iPad Air family is going to be the best-selling iPads moving forward in 2024. iPad Pro, yes, I'm going to personally pick one up, but I'm a niche user. I like to use it for productivity. It is my main computer and things of that nature, but using the iPad Air for most people is going to be the way to go, especially if you use it as a supplemental device, as a content consumption device, like most people use their iPads. So from a pricing standpoint, I do believe Apple's going to be keeping the 10.9-inch iPad Air at that same $599 price point, and then I think the 12.9-inch iPad Air is going to start at $799, but I do believe Apple's going to keep us at 64 gigs, which would be very unfortunate if Apple does that as a baseline storage. Then you have to spend $150 to upgrade it to 256, but let's see if Apple gives us maybe a 128 baseline and then a 512 as the next upgradable storage. But that is what we have on the iPad Air lineup. But that will just about do it for this video, everybody. If you think the iPad Air is going to be worth your time, worth your money, leave a comment down below about what you guys want out of that iPad Air. Do you think a larger iPad Air is going to be enough for people to actually jump into that larger iPad Air territory? Are people going to stick with their 11-inch or their 10.9 or even their iPad mini sizes? Are you somebody that uses their iPad as a main computer? Because I think that the 12.9-inch iPad Air is going to be more than enough for 99.9% of people, and not everybody's going to need to go out and spend $1,500 or maybe $1,800 on a new iPad Pro. That's just my 2 cents. I think the iPad Air is going to be the iPad for the people, in my opinion. But that will do for this video. Leave some comments down below about what you think Apple's going to do with their iPad lineup this year. Always curious to know your thoughts. But if you guys want to watch some more iOS, macOS, VisionOS, watchOS videos, click on one of these videos right here. But until next time, I'm Fernando, and I'm out of here, everybody. Peace.